In this video, I'm going to show you some of the new changes to assistants in Simtheory, how you can now choose which MCPs an assistant has access to, so you don't end up with a ton of different MCPs that you've installed on. You can isolate them to an assistant. This tutorial is also kind of helpful for people that are new to Simtheory and just want to learn about how to use assistants. And assistants really fundamentally are just for context. It's the best way to think about them. So you can train specialist assistants to help you do certain aspects of your job, like maybe a growth marketer or a researcher or a podcast maker. Or you can use them for specific projects where you want to upload a ton of different files or get it to crawl certain web pages and then use that data in your answers. So you're always referring back to that knowledge when you use the assistant. So in the first example, I want to show you how isolating MCPs can be really useful. So I'll call this assistant personal assistant, and then you'll see this new tab, MCPs, which we can tab over to. And then you'll see the option, restrict access to specific MCPs. And so by default, assistants have access to all the sort of global installed MCPs in your account. But if you want, you can switch on this new toggle and restrict the MCPs. And you might be asking, why would you want to restrict MCPs? And that's because if you have multiple accounts, like maybe accounts for work or accounts for your personal life, you might want to isolate them, or you might want to isolate specific, say, scientific MCPs for a scientific task you're doing, or certain MCPs for CRM and sales-like behaviors. So this is a really useful feature because it allows the assistant to be very focused with its tool calling. So we'll go ahead and select Google Calendar Personal because this is my personal assistant. I'll select Gmail Personal MCP connection. So this is down to the sort of connection level. So if you have multiple connections into Gmail here, you can actually choose which connection, which is really powerful. I could go on and switch on Google Docs or various other things. I might, for my personal assistant, want it to be able to crawl websites. So I'll turn on Fire Crawl. I'll give it some deep research capabilities. I also want it to be able to make phone calls on my behalf. So I'll select make phone calls. And for my personal assistant, I want it to have my Aura Ring data because it can have access to my health data and my sleep data. Why not? It'll get to know me a little bit more. And I want to give it some other research tools. So you can see how I've isolated a couple of MCPs here for the personal assistant. And what's great about this now is when I ask it about my calendar or my email, when I'm in this personal assistant context, it's going to have access and know which connection to definitively call versus you having to be very specific. So another option we've added is set default model for this assistant. So if you don't want this, you can just leave it off. But if you have a particular model that you like using for a certain assistant, you can actually now set it by turning this setting on. So in this case, I could go ahead and pick, say, Claude Sonnet, or I could pick Gemini or GPT-5, whatever my preferred model is here. So I've selected the MCPs that I want it to have access to, the model I want it to default to when I select it. And then here in the instructions, you don't have to fill the instructions out, but you could put things like don't book meetings, on weekends, or don't schedule anything on a Friday because I like to have an easier day. So you can put all the instructions in here. You can tell it, give it examples of how you typically respond to emails and all sorts of things like that. And that just helps with the MCPs as you're using them, and just makes everything work a little bit better. Now with knowledge, we don't, for this personal assistant, really need to add knowledge. You might add like a text knowledge here with a bunch of information about yourself if you really want to, but it's not really necessary in this case. So we'll go ahead and create it. And let's go ahead and open another tab here. And you'll see now, if I switch back to Simtheory and then I switch to my personal assistant, it will go ahead and select the preferred model, which was Claude 4 Sonnet that we selected. Let's go ahead and open another tab here, and I'm going to select Simtheory. And you'll see when I'm on Simtheory, I get access to all the installed MCPs that I have because this is on a global setting, and I can turn them on and off just like before. But then if I go back now to my personal assistant, you'll see that it only has access to the specific MCPs that we gave it access to. So it's really handy for switching context, and it can be context for a project, or it can be context for just to get the assistant working in a certain mode. Like I have a doctor in here that has access to my Aura Ring data, so it understands my health metrics when I talk to it, which is really helpful. And I have a growth marketer who's tuned to help market Simtheory. It understands Simtheory and has all the context. So I'm just switching context, and now when I switch context, I can switch tool sets as well here with the MCPs. Okay, so let's look at the final update that we've built in here. So say we want to create an assistant called Protein Researcher, and we want to look at insulin papers. So this is a project around proteins for insulin resistance because we're researching that. We can now upload files in here, so I can go and find a paper on insulin resistance that I want to reference and let it go ahead and upload here. We'll then go ahead and add the file, and you'll see it's in this pending state. When we do go ahead and save, it will then process. And in our MCPs here, we're going to give it a little bit of a different tune in terms of MCPs. We're going to say academic search, and we want to go ahead and select AlphaFold here. So it understands proteins, and then you could give it some sort of deep research skills as well if you wished. With the model, we might go ahead and select Gemini instead, and we'll click create. So now when we ask the protein research questions, you'll see it has access to this academic search, AlphaFold, and some deep research tools. Now, if we go to the assistant, click edit, and into the knowledge, we can see that the PDF and the sources have been fully processed, and we can add more sources in here as well if we need to. So we can upload files, edit to crawl different websites like documentation or various pages, as long as it's not authenticated, and also add text into the memory. And you'll see these live status updates now to show you what is in memory and not. So one final thing I'll show you is if you switch tabs here and go over to the personal assistant, you'll see the mix of MCPs here is related to the personal assistant, and then we cut back and we can see that they're related to protein research. So just a great way to switch context and utilize MCPs for your different assistants. I hope you enjoyed the update. If you have any feedback, make sure you let us know. And we've got a few more updates planned for assistants that are coming really soon. I'll see you in the next video.